FW Security B-Sides Conference, and it was a pretty interesting conference. They had some pretty good topics and pretty good speakers there. One of the people that presented actually presented at DerbyCon this year, and he's presented at DerbyCon and DEF CON, and I presented there myself. I presented on how to become a pen tester, as well as doing a web application penetration workshop. And normally this slide we announce our professor of the month, whereas in Dallas so far I haven't even presented there. It's been other people. I try to keep, wherever I'm in a location where there's other people that contribute, I like to let the lecturers kind of change so you don't see the same thing each month. I mean, the same subject can be covered like a couple months later from someone else's perspective, and you can learn something from their point of view, the way they do things. And tonight we're going to be covering bug bounties. And one of the things I always tell my students is that if you want to get into pen testing, some of the best ways to get experience is either through bug bounties or CTFs. A lot of employers are starting to count this as actual experience. And that's also like in labs too. You want a home lab. If you're wanting to learn pen testing, then you should definitely have a home lab. And we already did the intro, so we can skip that. And what are bug bounties? Bug bounties are crowdsourced pen tests or security assessments. Mainly web application, because web application is easier to test. Otherwise, people have to come on site. And the bug bounties, they do offer internal pen tests, but that's usually after you've worked for them for a while and you've proven yourself, then you get invited to internal pen tests. A couple years ago from HackerOne, I actually got invited to one of the DoD pen tests that but at the time I was working for AT&T traveling, and I didn't feel like traveling somewhere else over the holiday and giving up my vacation time to do that. But they pull people in for different things. The car hacking is getting pretty big. There's a lot of need for that, but there's not a lot of skilled people. So they're doing a lot of events, different places to train people to car hack, and they'll be coming out with some training materials on BugCrowd University for that. But it's mostly web applications. It's easier to test, easier to get to, and actually, you know, I would have thought, because I came from a network background, a sysadmin background, I would have thought that it would have been easier to learn network pen testing. That's because I was doing networking. But working with Jason Haddix, my contact at BugCrowd, he was telling me that he works with veterans to teach them skills, something they can get up to speed real quick. And he teaches web application pen testing. And, you know, with that, you just need to understand the web technologies, the different frameworks, and so it's not simple, but it's a little easier to get up to speed compared to, you know, having to learn the networking, the OSI model, learning all that stuff to be able to do that. And he said with these vets that he's able to do 6 or 8 week training courses where they meet like once a week or something to get them up to speed actually doing bug bounties. But mobile is also another area. Since you can actually download the apps, install them on your phone, and test those. And bug bounty programs can be managed by the company, or they can be managed by a company like BugCrowd or HackerOne, which really works out better for the company wanting the bug bounty, because either way you're going to have to pay someone the price it would cost to host a bug bounty. You'd have to pay that much for a full-time employee just to run the program, and then you got to learn all the ins and outs of managing the bug bounties. And with like someone like BugCrowd, they've got ASEs, application security engineers, can go back and validate the findings and make sure they're correct and help the customer with the remediation. So if your company wants to do bug bounties, it's a lot easier to go through a managed program than managing it yourself. And the benefits to bug hunting, education, experience, and it's a lot of fun, and you can make some money at bug bounties. It's a little tough starting out, but there's people that make some really good money at it. I'll show some stats here. Okay, here's some of the earning potential. These are ballparks that I got from Jason. It's not official data, but people working from 10 to 20 hours a week can make 20K to 90K a year. People that are working 20 hours to full-time have made anywhere from 100K up to 500K. One of the things I really like about these bug bounties too, from a humanitarian point of view, is you see people in some of these countries that there's no opportunities to make money. You know, some of these people may have went to school for computer science, but they can't use their degrees. And the nice thing about these bug bounties is you can access it through the internet. So people in these countries that normally couldn't make good money is changing their lives. I've seen people all the time that bought brand new MacBook Pros. They're able to get vehicles before they couldn't afford a car and stuff. So it's really kind of nice that these bug bounties give these opportunities to people that otherwise wouldn't have it. Although you can make this money, that kind of money, it's not that easy. You have to put a lot of work into it. And so if you want to decide what you're wanting to target as a bug hunter, kind of know your skill set or what you're interested in, you know, like either web technologies or mobile or IoT or internet network. And a couple of different books here that I recommend to train for web app pen testing is the Web Application Hacker's Handbook. That's where I would start out with. And the OWASP testing guide, version 4.0, it's actually available free for download, or you can access it online. It's a PDF. And it kind of takes you through the different steps of testing. The OWASP website is really good because it also can tell you how to remediate the items. You can get information, say if you're doing a bug bounty or doing a pen test and you're wanting to know how to remediate certain things, and you can go through the OWASP's website and look at ways to prevent cross-site scripting or SQL injection. So that's a really great resource. And there's some, they also have some free tools in there too, like OWASP Zap, which is a good tool. And that's actually offered on there for free. And one of the main tools that you're going to need is interception proxy. OWASP Zap, like we mentioned, that one's free, and it's a little bit easier to learn. And then there's also Burp Suite. And Burp Suite Professional is like around $400, but it's one of the best priced tools out there. If you really want to do bug bounties, I highly recommend getting Burp Suite, or if you're doing any kind of pen tests on the side, because of Burp Suite, and as you can do in Zap too, is you can do vulnerability scanning with it, as well as use it as interception proxy. And when I'm talking about interception proxy, you're actually intercepting HTTP requests, and you're able to go in and modify it. And sometimes you can modify like a session token and log in as a different person or access their data. So with these tools, you can intercept that information and change that and possibly gain access to the information you shouldn't. Or you can go in and sometimes you can change, just add one character, like a tick mark or a dash or something, and pass that on to the web server. And if it errors, then you can get information that can help you launch a more focused attack or find some kind of vulnerability that can be exploited. And this is what's referred to as fuzzing. If you're referring to fuzzing, that's how fuzzing works. You get the application to error and try to find those errors, and then take those errors and exploit the vulnerability. And here's some of the different paths of doing the tests. Some people will go really deep and focused, a lot of single apps. These are a lot of higher payout, and some people do wider focused. They do lots and lots of recon, and the payouts are kind of more minor. But so a lot of people making more money that are spending more on the deep focus, spending more time going through the app, crawling the app, figuring out how the logic of the application and how it works. Here's just kind of a recon methodology and open source tools that can be used. So here you can see where they're identifying IPS or IPs and main top level domains, domain scraping, discovering top level domains, domain brute forcing, resolving port scanning, visual identification. There's some of the tools you can use for that. Eyewitness for port scanning, mass scan or nmap, AMAS subfinder for looking for subdomains. And that's one of the ways that you can find some vulnerabilities that normally you may not find, is the subdomains. A lot of times these companies don't secure like Microsoft.com as well as they would be support.microsoft.com. Some of these other subdomains, a lot of times they're not as secure, and so a lot of times bug hunters will sit there and focus on those, and a lot of times you can find things because they're not as secure. Also, here you can see some of the use for content discovery, GoBuster, Burp Word List, Dirbuster is a good one, or Derby, and Dirbuster is actually built into OWASP Zap. You can go through and discover content. You can look for backup files, config files. Maybe the developer backed up some files and maybe they have passwords in it or something, so you can go through that information. Parameter discovery, all these are done with like Burp Suite, so you can and then also see what the platform's built with. And there's a tool that's called Built With and Wappleizer that you can find out what type of technology is running that application. And if they're doing their homework and setting up correct, their HTTP headers shouldn't reveal a lot of information, but most of the time your HTTP headers will tell you what version of the web server, what framework it's running. So a lot of times you can get good information from that, as well as like robots.txt. You can go through there, find files and directories that they don't want you to find, but you're able to go through and find some good information that they're trying to prevent you from getting to. A lot of cases they'll allow like the different web crawlers like Googlebot and Bingbot to crawl those directories. And so sometimes if you use like a user agent plug-in to your browser, you can change user agents and pose as a Googlebot, and sometimes they'll let you crawl stuff that it wouldn't let you crawl as a regular user. And sometimes by using a user agent switcher, you can go through and pose as a mobile device. Sometimes people loosen the security up for tablets or phones, so sometimes you can use that to get information you may not otherwise get and find some vulnerabilities. Another cool hack for that is if anyone uses, if anyone uses Instagram and you ever want to upload pictures to your laptop or whatever, your PC, which it won't let you do because you have to do it through a mobile device. If you use this user agent and change it to a mobile device, then you can upload photos to Instagram. So sometimes these hacking tricks are good for things outside of trying to hack or discover vulnerabilities. Mapping applications for success. So you discern what valuable data is for the end user. So you find out what, like if you're looking at the different bug bounties, you find out what kind of data they're looking for. Are they looking for personal data, credit card data, or anything like that? You want to register multiple accounts, so that way you can try to see if you can take over one of the other accounts, do like a replay attack and accesses the other accounts. Multiple roles are good. That way you can have like a regular user and admin accounts. Even though you're admin, you shouldn't be able to do everything, so you want to go through and see if you can do privilege escalation or get to information that you shouldn't with those accounts. And testing the forums, there's a lot of good information you can find in forums sometimes. Changing account data, uploading files. A lot of times one of the vulnerabilities with like Apache Tomcat or Apache JBoss Java servers, if they have unrestricted uploads, sometimes you can upload a malicious file. You can upload a malicious war file, which once it's uploaded becomes a JSP page, and you're able to access the application and get command line access to it. So those are some good things you can look for there. I've had a pen test one time that actually through SQL injection vulnerability, I was able to get command line access, and that's because the XP command shell was enabled on that server. So through Burp Suite, I was doing my vulnerability scan, and I found it was vulnerable to SQL injection. So then I was able to go through that SQL injection vulnerability and found out that XP command shell was enabled, and I was able to get command line access to that server. And once I did that, using John the Ripper, I was able to get their password, their service account running the web server, and crack it with John the Ripper pretty quickly. I was surprised how fast it was cracked, but the password was password, all lowercase, #1. So when you're doing this testing, is always don't write off the stuff. Start with the simple stuff, because sometimes they may not have a password. It may be a really easy password, default usernames and credentials. You run into that a lot. Weak credentials, easily guessed. I've had tests where I was able to run Nikto, which is a little command line utility that's free, and a lot of people write it off and don't think it's a good tool. It's open source, but it will go through and fingerprint the web server they're using, and sometimes it'll find passwords and like default usernames, passwords, and easily guessed passwords. One time I actually ran Nessus vulnerability scanner against this system, and it didn't even pick it up, but I went back and ran another tool, ran Nikto, and I was able to find out that it was using like default credentials, and this one was vulnerable to uploads, unfiltered uploads. So I was able to upload my payload to it, create a malicious JSP page, and then connect to it. And once I got connected to the system, is running as NT System Authority, which anyone who knows Windows, that's the highest level you can have on a local machine. So with that, I was able to create a user account RDP to the system. Once I got RDP to the system, then I was able to run invoke Mimikatz and and dump the passwords in clear text. So that's another thing that shows you when you're securing your systems, make sure you're running at a lower level system. authority, because you don't want to run, you want to run, like set up a web account, something that's really low level, so it's just enough to run the application without giving you access to do other things. If they had done this right, then it would have made my job a lot harder. I probably wouldn't have got as far as I did. And that, and you make sure if they would have had strong passwords in place, I wouldn't have guessed and got that far. So every single layer of the security really counts. And so also some tricks you can do also too is try to bookmark certain content types, and then you can go back and see after you're logged out if you're able to get back into the system to test the account logout and session strength. And as mentioned, try default creds. Always try the easy stuff first. And back to these educational resources. And here's some other really good resources out there. Bugcrowd University, and they've got some really good content out there. There's some tutorials on how to do how to use Burp Suite, how to do cross-site scripting, I think SQL injection, and these sites like Bugcrowd University, they want to get people educated and up to speed, because the more people can do this stuff, the more people they have, researchers or bug hunters working for them, and so the bigger their staff, their force is, the better. Pentester Academy is another really good resource. Right now they've got a beta going on of their new virtual labs, their online labs, which is kind of nice. A lot of labs usually require you to run a VPN to connect to it, but the nice thing about Pentester Academy, you're able to connect through a web interface. They've got CTFs, wireless-based pen testing attacks, all the different vulnerable web apps on there as well. That's a really good resource. And if anyone's interested in getting, I still have some beta codes left, so if you message me or email me, I can send you a code to that. I'm not sure how long the beta test is going on, but they're doing a really good job of testing it, see if anyone finds any problems with the system, as well as they're also going there load testing the system if they need to add servers to it or not. But it's a real good educational resource. If you hadn't heard of Pentester Academy, they have some really good videos. It was originally like SecurityTube, and they did offer some paid content, or some paid content. Now it's pretty much all paid. And cyberray.it is a good site. There's some pen testing courses on there. The advanced pen testing course is based on Georgia Weidman's book on pen testing, which is the manual I use for my pen testing class at Richland. And also samuraiwtf.org. It stands for Web Testing Framework. They have a Linux distribution out there for testing web application pen testing. But if you also look on there, they have a PDF, a training course. One of the original creators of the SANS web application pen testing course wrote that material, and this PDF is pretty similar to the stuff on the SANS course. It's pretty easy to get through and pretty helpful. eLearn Security, if you don't have the budget for the SANS courses, they have some pretty good courses. Code Academy, if you're wanting to get into web app pen testing, it's kind of good to learn some coding. You can learn Python on there, as well as HTML and PHP and some of those other type of development languages that would be helpful for a pen tester. Also freecodecamp.org, if you want to learn the code, that's a really good one. It's full stack web development, starting out with basic HTML, Bootstrap, CSS, like the different types of the different Java frameworks. So it goes like from start to finish. And once you complete the course or get towards the end, they actually can set you up with a nonprofit, so you can help someone do web development, so you get hands-on experience for free. And here we're going to, I have a VM that I created for B-Sides that I've got set up, and if anyone's interested, I can post the link where you can download it. But I set up a virtual environment for my web application pen testing workshop for B-Sides DFW. And so this little VM is just a single VM, because most of the time, if you set up a lab, you have multiple VMs. And one of the things I was looking at when I was setting this up is Maven Security had a VM that they had called Security Dojo. And the thing I liked about the Security Dojo is it was all contained on one system, on one VM. And the advantage of that is if you're sitting there trying to set up a lab for a workshop, then you're going to have at least the attack machine and the targets. With this, it puts it all on one machine. So therefore, you don't have to worry about network issues. Let's see. So how many people in here work in security now? That's good. So how many people are wanting to get into security? Okay. A really good place to start if you're just kind of getting started certification-wise, it's a good one to get your foot in the door is the Security Plus. A lot of the people I know, a lot of the hiring managers I've talked to looking for entry-level security people really look like the Security Plus. It's a pretty good information. That certification has really improved over what it used to be. And actually, we're looking at Richland, the manuals. I'm probably going to go to the summer semester or fall semester to start using the Pen Test Plus materials. Been kind of going over some of those materials here lately, the trainer stuff to see how good that course is. And so far, what I'm seeing of it, I like it better than the Certified Ethical Hacker. Although the Certified Ethical Hacker has been around longer, I think the material is more realistic to the industry. As far as application pen testing certifications, SANS Web Application Pen Testing Cert is a pretty good one out there. Usually it's like one of the few. It's like one of the only ones out there besides e-learning security. And a lot of times people looking for web application pen testers, that's one of the certifications that they look for. But some of this stuff you don't always have to have the actual certification, so you can go through and study the materials. So once you get the Web Application Hacker's Handbook and go through that and learn how to pen test, and you play around in your lab environment and do CTFs or bug bounties, and when you can describe how to do that stuff when you go through a technical interview, you're able to explain. They're able to get a level set of what your knowledge is, and you know what you're doing. Because whereas sometimes people have certifications that they just memorize the questions, didn't know what they're doing. So, and when you work on any certification, you want to make sure you understand what you're doing, and not just pass the test and get the certification. So with this finished loading on here, I thought this was already copied over. But I've got this VM set up to where it's already got the proxy server set up, because whenever you set up burp, you have to go into your proxy settings of the browser and set it to that port to get it to proxy traffic through there. So on this VM, I've got OWASP Zap set up and burp, but I went ahead in each one of the browsers and added a proxy switcher, so that way you can switch between either one of the tools. And then also the vulnerable VMs are Docker images. So there's 8 different vulnerable VMs on this image that you can run. And for the workshop, I really only needed one, but I wanted to build something that someone can take and study. So you got this VM that you can play around and learn web app pen testing through there. They've got like the damn vulnerable web app, OWASP's GOAT, let's see, and Juice Shop is another one of OWASP's projects out there that's a vulnerable web application. And so on these, basically, you just start the Docker image up, and then within the browser, I've got bookmarks for each one of the vulnerable apps, so that way you don't have to go through and copy the URL and enter that. Another nice thing about the script I found to set up those Docker images is that it creates a unique host name and IP address for each one of those vulnerable apps. So even though it's used like 127, not .1, but other IP addresses in that range, so that way it creates a unique host name and IP address for each one of those. So that way, if you're wanting to run like Nmap, doing port scanning against those, you can also run that as well. So it's not just you could set it up to where you're not using the different IP addresses and all that, but this is a lot nicer way of doing that, separate out, so it's more realistic to a real environment without having to host it on multiple systems. No, not in this, but if you want a good VM for doing pen testing from a Windows environment, there's a project out there called Flare VM, and it's some different scripts, and it installs the different pen testing tools on there. And I'm glad you mentioned the Windows thing. A lot of people have gotten, with Kali Linux, a lot of people totally got away from Windows, and there's still a lot of good tools and stuff you can use there. Sometimes when you're testing, when you're doing application tests, sometimes you have to have a Windows machine and like Windows Explorer, Internet Explorer, or Edge to get things to work correctly. So that Flare VM is pretty nice because it also has a lot of reversing tools on there too. So if you're into reverse engineering, and sometimes on a pen test, being able to reverse engineer stuff's good. A lot of times you'll have to reverse engineer Java files, and sometimes you can find configuration information in those Java files. But that Flare VM is pretty nice. I have like a VM that I got for my personal pen testing setup that I've got Flare VM. Recently added that to Windows 10 install that I got. Does anyone else have any questions while this is loading? The cost to host it, I think it's like around $150,000 that you pay. Then of course you're paying bounties out on top of that, but that's what you pay them to manage, which is not bad because that's about what you're going to pay a full-time person to work for you managing a bug bounty program. So with benefits and all that, that would be about what it would run. And then you're just paying the bug bounty, the bounties on top of that. And one of the advantages to that is that you pay for what they find. So a lot of times you hire someone to do a pen test, and say like you're paying them $23,000 and they don't find anything good, then you still paid it even though they didn't really find anything serious. Whereas with the bug bounties, you're only paying for what's found on top of them managing the program, which you can manage the program yourself. But like I said, whenever you have someone to manage it, I don't know that you could get out much cheaper. And the best thing about it is just the knowledge that the company that you're working with on the bug bounties has, running those bug bounty programs. They already got rules set in place. They've been doing this for years already, so it's just a little bit easier to do. But the interesting thing is with the bug bounties, you can also do private programs. So not anyone can test that system. So some people are worried about everyone attacking it, and maybe they're not vetted and this kind of thing, but whereas the private bug bounties, there's only certain people allowed to test that. And with the private bug bounties too, then you're able to monitor the IPs that are attacking your systems, because like a regular pen test, if I'm testing your systems, then when I start the pen test, I'm going to give you my source IP address so you can monitor that traffic to make sure it's me and not someone malicious trying to hack into your system. But it's kind of interesting because one of the nice things about bug bounties too is that some of these testing can be done after hours, so it's off production hours, and then it's more similar to a actual attack because you've got people from all over attacking the system, and you've got so many unique different ways. I mean, you could have like 1,000 people testing your application, whereas if you paid for a pen test, you may only have like one or two pen testers. So you got different points of view, and the people that do the bug bounties have a unique way of testing, because since it's really hard to make money at it, then they have to be able to find effective ways of testing. So there's sometimes things that they'll find through their testing that a regular pen tester wouldn't find, because pen testers like myself, we're usually not looking for like subdomain takeovers or trying to see what you can do with subdomains. Usually you're going after that exact URL and testing that. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yeah.
So, as a pen tester, how do you kind of protect yourself, maybe legally, from companies that may misinterpret what you're doing? And they expect you to attack one area, you find
if you're,
How do you make sure you stay within bounds that are kind of accepted by?
if you're working like if you're doing like a bug bounty, if you're going that route,
Yeah.
that's one of the nice things about it. Some people do security research and they'll find bugs out there on their own. And one of the nice things about something like BugCrowd or HackerOne or those other bug bounty companies is when you sign up with them, you're going through them, so you kind of have protection. Now, if you're an individual doing pen tests, then you need to, you want contracts on this stuff and define the scope, because it'll, you want to make sure that, outline the scope of what can be tested, the type of items that can be done during the pen test, and then agree upon that with the customer. So if you have this signed document, then you did this and you stay within that scope, you're okay. If you go outside of it, maybe you're doing this application and you get command line access and you go after other systems in that environment, that's out of scope. So one of the things as a pen tester, you want to really stick to that scope. It may be fun to go after something like that, but always remember, stick with the scope, because then that's going to, it's like if you were like an independent contractor or a consultant doing your own thing, then you wouldn't want to do something like that, because then they're not going to hire you back or give you good reference. So as a pen tester, just stick to the scope and make sure you got that perfectly defined, and go over that with make sure when you're talking to your customer what the goals are. Sometimes it's trying to find, private information and that kind of stuff. And sometimes it's just trying to see if you get how high level access you can get. But just make sure you have that scope well defined and them sign off on it. You're welcome. And then also as a pen tester, you want to be careful what tools you run to, because there's like some tools out there like MassScan. It's a really high powered port scanner. If you really crank it up, you can turn it into a DOS tool, causing denial of services. I was testing airlines one time in their internal network, and I was doing some testing, and I was running MassScan. It was taking forever to do this network segmentation scanning. So I thought, well, if 1,000 is good, then 10,000 must be better. And so I ended up rebooting a couple of firewalls. And then I had someone staring on my shoulder the rest of the pen test, which worked out pretty good. We turned out to be friends. This guy was interested in pen testing, and but yeah, MassScan, you be really careful. They claim that you can scan the whole internet, and I'm sure that's only internet ports, but they claim you can scan the whole internet in like 6 minutes. So like I said, I'll have this link available where you can download this VM, but first I kind of show you I'm using Cherry Tree to do the documentation here. And I kind of put some stuff in here to make it easy. That way you don't have to dig through all the sites trying to figure this stuff out yourself. The script I used was from Pentest Lab, or called Pentest Lab is the name of it, because you're creating a little Pentest Lab. And it shows the different scripts you need to start. So this first line right here, if you're wanting to just list the, I don't know if y'all can see that or not. But they got the syntax here to list the different vulnerable VMs as well as starting them. And I tried to make this where it's pretty easy to get up to speed, so there's not a lot of configuration to do. And I even have, there's the Arachna web app vulnerability scanners on here. And if you look in the root of the home directory for root, there's an Arachna web start. That way it goes ahead and starts it. You don't have to navigate to that directory to start the Pentest Lab VMs. We just go here and let's see. Can do a listing on our apps. And to start, we just replace that list with start. We're going to use the buggy web app. And this is kind of nice too, because when I was getting ready for B-Sides, I was building the VM and it got up to like 30 gigs, so I went back and reinstalled it from an ISO to get it down small. So this thing, I think once you install the VM, it's like disk-wise, it's only like 6 gigs, but once you install it, it makes like a 10 gig VM. And once you launch this, it'll show you the IP address for the image, as well as if it has like a default username and password, it has that listed there. And in this one, I believe on this one here, the bookmark that I have on there doesn't do the install, so you have to do install first to finish up the rest of that configuration. But Any of the stuff that requires any kind of configuration is pretty minor. Let's go in here so we can get to the bookmarks easier. So if you notice, there's a little folder called Vuln Web Apps. And so we started this one here, so we're going to have to run the install first. But once you get that install configured, then you can log in. So we have to click here to complete the install. But a lot of these different vulnerable apps will go through and they'll take you through different types of vulnerabilities. Like for instance, the Damn Vulnerable Web App, you can go in and adjust the difficulty. So you can start out easy, and so you can goof around cross-site scripting, and then the other vulnerabilities, like exploits, as you go through it, and then you can bump up the intensity. So you can make it go medium level, and then difficult, play around with those, because some of the concepts are kind of easy at first, but then when you get into pen test, a lot of cases, the stuff that happens on the easy doesn't always happen, so it's sometimes a little more difficult. And so we got our credentials there. I'm going to go back to our notes. We also have the notes on Arachna. And let's see, actually, list that because I think it's Arachna web start. But at any rate, it shows the, okay, there it is. It tells you how to start that web vulnerability scanner and where to open it up with in the browser, and actually create a bookmark for that. And what I did is I installed a separate browser. So like if you're doing a pen test, you want to be able to have access to your to burp proxy. So you'll want to run like two different browsers. So I set up Chrome. So if you look at this one under bookmarks, you got the vulnerable web apps. If you want to go there, and then we're wanting to just launch the vulnerability scanner. So now we got the vulnerability scanner pulled up. And then also in the pen test, I also listed the accounts, the user accounts, the default credentials in here to log in with. And the pen tester lab also listed some of the accounts there that was listed. And like for the Matilda Day, there's a link to a text file that has all the passwords and stuff for that. So I've just tried to line out some notes to make this a little quicker to get up to speed on it, so you don't have to like research all this stuff just to be able to use the VM. And so this is set up since you got the two different browsers. Now you can do your vulnerability scanner through this, scanning through this. Arachna can also be done from the command line, but the nice thing about the web interface is you have a nicer output, easier to read the report results. So that's kind of nice to do that way. And then up here we've got, like I mentioned, the different user agent switchers. So we can go in here and you can see how we've got like Googlebot and then the different mobile devices. There's even like a PS4 user agent. That would be kind of interesting if you were to be able to connect to the web for a PS4 and see how that works. Because imagine if you connect a regular device, you can't do certain things or connect. So these let you get around it. I actually install two different user agent switchers. This other one has a lot more to it, and you can also, it's easier to add extra user agents to it. But I first found out about some of the tricks with the user agent stuff through the SANS web application pen testing course, because it says some apps, sometimes it's easier for mobile devices to get in. So if you're testing an app, if you test as a mobile device, then you may be able to that, and you may not be necessarily get it easier, but maybe there's bugs that you can find using that user agent that you normally wouldn't find. so we also got the proxy switcher, and for Firefox, I'm using Foxy Proxy. And I already have this configured. We'll go ahead and look at the options, because normally you'd have to go in here and configure this. But I went ahead and set this up for both these tools. Got port 8080 set for burp, and then port 8081 for zap. And then you can add, if you have other devices that you're using for proxies, you can add that there. And so you can go here and enable burp. And some of the main differences between the free version of Burp Suite and the professional version is with the professional version, you can do vulnerability scanning, and there's certain tools that you can use, certain plugins, extensions for Burp that you have to have the professional version to use, and then certain tools are throttled. So if you're doing this, you know, if you're making money off pen testing or bug bounties, then I would definitely recommend getting the pro version. But if you're just kind of playing around, just, you know, not sure you won't make that investment yet, then you can kind of fill in the gaps. OWASP Zap, say you want to do your vulnerability scanning, you could use Arachna to do the vulnerability scanning, or OWASP Zap, because it's got like a built-in vulnerability scanner, which is not disabled like it is on Burp Suite. So now we got this connected here. And this is why it's called interception proxy, because we're intercepting the HTTP request, and so if you want, you could forward that, and you can also, if you want to, you can send it to intruder or repeater, and then like repeater, you can kind of take this request, and you can come in here and just see. There's nothing interesting in there to really tamper with, but or you can turn intercept off. But this is one of the tougher concepts for people to get used to, because when you set it up and you get in there, and so like you set up you browse to the page for the first time and you have the intercept on, then it's going to prevent your traffic from flowing through, so your page won't render. Whereas the professional version, you'd be able to go in here and you could do a scan, a passive scan, or a active scan, and then you can add items to scope, which is kind of nice if you have if they have a bunch of different plugins on their site and it's pulling the information from these other sites, then if you only have that in scope, then you can go in here and click only show items in scope, and then only show the items that are in scope. This also kind of prevents you, making sure you're only testing things in scope, prevents you from testing someone else's site or applications that are out of scope, so it's kind of good to have that set. And then with the intruder here, you can test these different values. You can, say for instance, if it's like a password, you could go in here and set the password and pick a password list, and it'll try passwords. This is, a lot of times people use a lot of manual tools, like command line tools to do password brute forcing, but with Burp Suite, it made a lot of that easier, because you can just get like a password list and go through there. You can alternate between usernames and passwords. You can do like password spraying with that, where you sit there and take like one password and use it over multiple accounts. That way you don't lock out your account. And here's where you would normally have the scanner. You can also decode stuff, so it's 64-bit encoded. You can sit there and send it to the 64-bit decoder and decode it. A lot of the applications that use basic authentication, it's just 64-bit encoded. So sometimes you can decode that and find good information. A lot of times people think that's encrypted, but it's not, so you can actually decode that. And on my pen test, a lot of times, sometimes I'll even go through and use Wireshark, and we'll do intercept that traffic and show that, okay, this is passing across the network, this is in clear text. You're able to go through and decode it. And the extender here is where you can go in and add the different items, and you see some of these where it says requires Burp Professional. And there's one tool that I installed in here that's pretty nice. It's called Hunt. It's actually one of bug crowds tools that they came up with. In this hunt methodology, there's also the scanner, and this will go through and show you the different methodologies, so you can select APIs, and it shows you the different type of attacks to test for. And sometimes on this one, the scanner piece doesn't load. So you have to go in there and load it, see if it'll load for us. But this one, it'll actually, when you go through using this tool, it'll show you the different items that are in this different category. So you can, this kind of shows you how to test, and the scanner piece will show you things that are vulnerable in these certain areas. And then you just kind of dig down, and you can kind of see where it's vulnerable. And this is kind of nice because you can use different frameworks. You can use like the OWASP testing guide, or you can also use the web application hacker's handbook and use that methodology in here as well, or create your own. So if you have some custom methodology for your testing, you can use that. And here's one of my favorite plugins, CO2, the SQL injection vulnerability that I found that let me get command line access to that system was using this. Because within your system, if it's vulnerable to you can go through and you can do like send to CO2 or SQL mapper, and it launches SQL map, and it'll go through if it finds any vulnerabilities. Sometimes you have to go to the command line to go a little further with it, but this is kind of a nice quick way to test that without having to go to the command line, and it takes a little more time and effort to get through this. With that little tool, it makes it a little quicker to get through. And the nice thing about this little VM too is you can sit there and run your laptop. If you're somewhere you don't have internet access, you can still run it. And this is one of the things that I like about Burp Suite. I mean, about OWASP Zap. If you want to do a vulnerability scan, you don't have to worry about proxying and all that. You can come here. We can take our URL and just go put it in the Zap. And just run attack on it. Now it's completed, and we see our alerts over here that, and of course we should find vulnerabilities in here, so you can see these. And the nice thing about this is based on the OWASP top 10, so which the findings in Burp Suite is as well. So there's different tools that you can use in here. There's also a spider here. There's different, and they click this arrow right here to add more tools. So if it's the site's using Ajax, you can use the Ajax spider. There's a fuzzer. You can do your fuzzing. There's the forced browsing. When we were talking about Dirbuster a while ago, you can go through there and select your site, and then go in here and pick the list. So we can pick like a word list. So there's just like a simple dictionary list there. There you go. Okay. I'm just going to kick this off. And it looks for different types of files that can be vulnerable, like text files, and here you see. And sometimes you can find comments. Sometimes some developer, maybe to make it easy, they commented out passwords and usernames within that file, and so maybe you can go through there and find some of this stuff. And this is what it looks for. It looks to see it's finding some backup files. And see, here we go here, and you're looking at this WP, so this is where it looks like a WordPress configuration file. So if you go in here, you found the database name, and you're also the password to the database and the username. So this is why it's helpful to look for those. There's also like Derby is another tool that you can run from the command line, and GoBuster that do the same thing. But the nice thing about these is when you do it within the browser, if you find something, then you can sometimes launch further attacks or use other tools against those items, and kind of an easier place to keep track of it. Otherwise, if you're doing GoBuster, Dirbuster, or Derby, then you have to output it to a text file. So it's kind of easier to navigate around and look for it. And this one also has like some different plugins you can put in install, and it's the marketplace. You can see a lot of these are release candidate up to beta and alpha releases of these tools. But one of the nice things about Zap that was brought to my attention at the SANS training was that there's a lot of things, a lot of features within Zap that Burp Suite didn't have, and so they started adding those items because people were using OWASP Zap. Just like the store feature on Zap they had at first, and used to with Burp Suite, you have to manually go in and upload files to install your plugins, and then they end up adding the store to make it easier to install. So one of the nice things about Zap, it's constantly forced Burp Suite to improve their product. And also on the subject of Burp Suite, the one book I recommended, the Web Application Hacker's Handbook, one of the authors of that is one of the writers of the OWASP Zap, actually Burp Suite tool. And that book is really good if you're wanting to learn Burp Suite, although there's been some pretty major changes here lately with Burp Suite. So there you can see the scanner is running in the background for the Arachna scanner. No, I actually have that book, but I hadn't read it yet, but it's supposed to be really good.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic. So it goes through kind of the history of web technologies and shows you how kind of hacked together they are and all the places where they don't fit together nicely. So it's kind of a nice roadmap of all the things you look for in an application that the developer would get wrong, because they just thought that, oh, of course that handles Unity code correctly. Like, no, it doesn't, right? Or of course you can, take this kind of thing in JavaScript and say, no, it can't. So it's written for web developers. It's Tangled Web. Tangled Web. Yeah. But if it's written from like a blueprint of what to look for in applications that would cause them to be broken, it's really kind of open your eyes to a bunch of different things.
That's what the cover of the book looks like.
Yeah. It is a depressing read though.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm glad you told me, yeah.
It's like it looks so nice and shiny from the outside,
Right.
like the web, right? And like look at how things work together.
Yeah, that's why also too, if you're interested in this stuff, to learn how to do a little development, learning how to develop makes it easier to understand. Because it's easier to break into stuff if you know how to make it, how to build it. It's easier to break. Okay. So I didn't have that proxy switched over to Zap, so it wasn't going through. There you go. This juice shop is a really fun one to goof around with. And you can set this up at work. It's almost, you can do like a CTF and challenge your coworkers. It pretty much covers the walkthrough on this. have any questions?
Hey, you're gonna put this up, correct?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Actually, I've got a link already up. I got it shared on Google Drive, so I'll send that out.
Awesome.
So that way you can download it. Yeah, when you're some of the bugs, if you haven't worked with VirtualBox much, sometimes you'll run into an error, and basically you just got to change like from USB 2 to USB 1. Because when I was installing this, and then if you don't have any kind of virtualization running on your computer, then sometimes you have to go through and enable virtualization on your BIOS.
Yeah, it's like switch to one cell.
I like VirtualBox because it's free. Otherwise, for VMware, you have to pay for it. There's a lot. They're making more and more of the vulnerable VMs for VirtualBox. But if you have like OVA or OVF file, you can pretty much run it either one. Anyone have any questions? Yes. I actually have just started playing around with them because just from a standpoint of trying to learn bug bounty stuff, because I've done web app pen testing. I just hadn't had the time here lately to work on bug bounties, but over the holiday when I have some vacation time, I plan to. Because it's pretty interesting because it's a lot more difficult than just a regular web app pen test because the scope is so narrow. Like for cross-site scripting, whereas like if I'm testing for cross-site scripting and you can't really exploit or do anything with it, then it's all on the report because I'm able to make a little pop-up box in my browser showing it's vulnerable. But with what they consider vulnerable on these bug bounties, you have to do something with it. It has to be actual vulnerable to some real actual exploit. Yes. Yeah, it's another company you're testing. Mm-hmm. It's first going to go, it's pretty much going to be bug crowd, and then they pass on to the customer because they have their application security engineers that go through and validate and make sure that it is vulnerable, vet it out, and then they pass it on. So that's the good thing there too and I think a lot of times I've heard people that have worked with bug bounties directly with companies. Sometimes companies pick you, or maybe they don't want to pay out. And at least there you got someone on your side with one of these like bug crowd saying this is vulnerable, pass it on, and you get. And they have, and they say the best way to start out is to start out with the charity bounties, because there's some companies out like Humble Bundle, it's a nonprofit. So Humble Bundle actually has a bug bounty program. And so you're able to test on those. They say to test on those because most people are going after the bug bounties that pays money. So you start out on those because there's not as many targets and you get experience with that. I think a lot of them listed there is more difficult, but then once you get in there and get experience and you start getting invited to some of the other bug bounties, I think your opportunity to make more money improves. Because I think a lot of those people that make all that money I think they're probably being invited to some of the other bug bounties, not just the ones open to anyone. But you go on the site and it'll have like the different bug bounties and what's in scope and what's not in scope. They'll show you what subdomains can be tested, it can't be tested. So it's like a pen test. They got the scope listed on there. And this nice thing about it is it's pretty plain and simple. If you're working as a pen tester, then the statement of work and your scope is multi-page. But with this, you've got like usually one page and it's a few paragraphs of what's allowed and what's not allowed to test. Yeah, Humble Bundle. If you hadn't checked that site out, they have a lot of good book deals. I've gotten a lot of good security books from them. They'll give away like $300 worth of books for like $15, and the money goes to charity. And a lot of times you can pick the charity that it goes to. Yeah, it was the PIA VPN, wasn't it? They were giving away that, and they had some other software at that time with some of the security books, like some of the web application hacking handbook. That one's been on there. There's been several of the pen testing and hacking books on there listed in those. And they usually put out, I guess within the past year, they put out like 2 security book bundles, and each time you almost get every single book that's out there. Yeah, so it's like usually at least 15 books or so. It's like several $100s worth of books. Anyone else have any questions?
Anyone
Yeah.
originally asked, people that are trying to get into security, what advice would you give to them? Because of the way I went Udemy,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess a lot's going to depend on what you're doing, but I would say make sure you get the basics. So you want to learn the operating system and networking. You want to skip that. In pen testing, while it sounds fun and the ethical hacking thing, people want to, the mistake most people do is they want to jump right into that. They'll start trying to run Kali Linux and run these tools, and they don't understand TCP/IP. So you need to understand routing and TCP/IP, how DNS works, and all that. So you need to start with the basics, the operating systems, the networking, and then the security. And that's why I'm a big fan of CompTIA, because now they've got like a course that's a step below like the A+. That's like an intro to IT. And then they got the A+. So it's a really good path to follow. So really good resources like Professor Messer. Yeah, because they got like the A+, Network Plus, Security Plus. One of the guys from Dallas Hackers, I met him in 2015. He was working as a recruiter, and he wanted to be a pen tester, but he spent like a year studying SOC related stuff and doing networking and security. And while he was studying, after about a year, he got a job in a SOC, and then while he was in the SOC, he continued to train. But he said one of the things that helped him the most is just those Professor Messer videos. He didn't get any of the certifications, but he just went through it and learned the content. So yeah, that's a really good place to learn. And,
The CompTIA certs for the CYSA and the pen test plus, do you still advise one to have as certs and training ones?
I think so.
I just passed the CCI.
Yeah, that's considered their intermediate. Yeah, intermediate cert. They got the, what is it, the CASP, that's the next level above that.
Yeah.
But I would say with the CYSA, you're just kind of showing if you're competing against someone that's got a Security Plus, then that can give you a level up. But the nice thing about the CYSA and Pentest Plus, they're kind of opposing certs. One's more blue team, the other's more red team. So really those are two that are really good to kind of take together, because then, or take one and then follow up by the other one, because whatever you learn in the blue teaming one, they started covering some pen testing concepts instead of lower level certs, like the Security Plus and the CYSA. So they cover vulnerability assessments and pen tests. So you get to learn about that stuff. And so taking both of those would be really good knowledge. And if you go out to their site, it's pretty nice where they got the certs laid out, like the intro to IT, the A+ and Security Plus, and then the CYSA and Pen Test Plus are their intermediate certs. And I think, honestly, I think the Pen Test Plus is going to eventually overtake the CEH.
I did the beta on the Pen Test Plus, and it works like heck at it. No offense to CH.
Yeah.
I learned quite a bit on CH.
Mhm.
Passed it, Pen Test. It's going to get the CH.
CEH is a good way to get your foot in the door, but it's not respected. If HR and managers that see it,
HR loves it.
HR and managers that don't understand it, they like it.
Right.
And it's a DoD cert, but the Pen Test Plus, all the CompTIA certs are DoD, so once it goes through the next iteration, then the Pen Test Plus will be a DoD cert. But I think the Pen Test Plus will overtake it, because if you have these other things building up to it, opposed to you just took the CEH. And I've heard in the EC Council, I don't know if anyone's ever heard of the charlatans list, but attrition.org has a charlatans list, and they kind of tell you people that do bad business practices, or they plagiarize other people's materials, and EC Council's on there. Yeah. So a lot of the pen testers, we don't really respect. It's good to get your foot in the door. And I tell people when they say, what cert should I get? And I'm going to tell them CEH would, help get your foot in the door. But if you want to be taken serious or have certs that are really good, then you want like the GPN or the OSCP. I actually got the OSCP myself. That's a good one. Because you go through that, you can prove you can do it. You can ask Albert, that's a tough certification test. The thing it's a mistake, I think, is a lot of people go out there and start out with that certification. It's not entry-level certification. It's really, honestly, you really need to have been pen testing, I'd say, for 3 years or so. 3 years experience before attempting that. And it's not going to be as crazy difficult. For me, the buffer overflow section was a lot more difficult, but then someone like Albert that knows coding, that's easier, but you've got the networking background. But it's a tough cert. I really think you should have about 3 years experience before you even mess with it. But the pen test.
Because I did OSCP and got let my lab time lapse,
Yeah.
and I found that the hack box is really comfortable to a lot of people. Because I know it is a substitute for training.
Yeah.
What's one of the functions.
But
Their lab is really awesome. So it's kind of awesome.
yeah, you can learn a lot, because the thing about their training, actually I like virtual hacking's labs training better than OSCP, because I found out about that. One of my students first semester found out from a guy at IBM that had recently got his OSCP, and he did the virtual hacking labs, I don't know for how many months, but after he'd completed virtual hacking labs, He hacked every system in there. Then he was able to go do the OSCP labs, and he studied for a month and passed his OSCP, which is crazy. So that goes to show how well virtual hacking labs work. In virtual hacking labs, they start you out like they have the different systems are rated, so you know going into it. They have a really good training up front, and once you get into it, they have the different machines listed on there, and they have the level of difficulty. So they have like easy, and they'll have hints on there on what to try to exploit to get into it. As you get more difficult, they don't have the hints, but it's a really good way to get trained and kind of ramp you up. You know, you get in OSCP labs, it's like you don't know, you only know from what you hear, like in the IRC chat or online, which ones are tough. So you don't have any idea. But the nice thing about virtual hacking labs, they do a better job of training you up before you get to the more difficult machines. So anyone that wants to do the OSCP, I would do virtual hacking labs or hack the box for a while before you did that.
Most of these trainings are
Yeah.
the content.
Yeah.
There's a YouTube channel guy called BISD, IPPS.
Yeah.
Yep.
What he does is take every box as it retires and water agreements.
Yeah.
I looked at it.
That's cool. Yeah, walkthroughs are really good. Even if you look at the over-the-wire CTF stuff and look at the walkthroughs on that, because everyone has a different way of doing something, and several of those machines have more than one way to hack it. So try to get through it on your own if you can't. Then go through the walkthroughs. You're still going to learn. Some people think it's cheating, but if you go through those things and you're learning how people do that, then once you go on to some other vulnerable VM, then you're going to have things that you can use on that. And then like building your own lab, there's all those vulnerable VMs you can download. You can go to VulnHub, and then a lot of those are like retired CTF VMs. So some different B-sides or whatever, they'll have their CTF up there, and then they'll upload their image up there, so you can go through those. CTF's a really good way to learn this stuff. A lot of the CTFs include some web stuff too. Any other questions?
For the on-app pricing list, so that makes sense if you're a large corporation.
Mhm.
You're a startup and you're looking for a cheaper option. Is there any type of crowdsourcing? That's
Yeah, that would be kind of, unless you did like some of those, I guess the CTF, I mean the bug bounties, I guess you have to pay a flat rate. In that case, you may just be cheaper to find a pen tester to test it. And I guess it depends on what you got to test. If you're a startup and you have an app you're trying to, that you're trying to market, then it would be worth having it pen test. So you may have to, and depending on the app, say if you've only got, so like your network, there's only like 20, maybe even 100 IPs on your system, and you only got 5 apps, you can have that tested for, probably about $20,000 or so, maybe $10,000, depending on the people testing, or either hire your own people to test. Sometimes you can hire a good pen tester, then maybe it'd be worth the money to have them on staff to do that testing.
so, like I go to Upwork to find various types of developers. Is there a site I would go to find pen testers?
I really don't know a good site to that. Best thing would be referral. Talk to someone that you know that's a pen tester. So if you need something like that, I know people that do that. I do some side work through a company. So I'd make sure I'd find a company that deals with pen tests, not just, I'd be careful on Upwork, because you may get someone out there that wants to do a pen test. Maybe they never have, because that's what everyone wants to be a pen tester or hacker, and you let someone do it, there's not much telling what they may do. And someone that's a true professional, one of the things I take in consideration when I do a test, because after working all those years as a sysadmin, you know what it's like for an outage, there's things to break. So you're always careful when you're in there, because someone else is going to have to fix this behind you, so you're careful. So you really want someone experienced and that's conscious of that. You get someone off Upwork or something like that. And I've heard that's even bad to even try to work through sometimes. I've heard people going through Upwork trying to get side projects, and someone could actually be trying to get you to hack some site for them, or maybe they could be mad at someone, and they could, have the site pen tested and put it up there, and then, they're basically having someone attack it, and then you could get in trouble if you're not careful. So if you're a pen tester, you want to go through legitimate sources, and if you're getting pen testing done, then find something it's a referral, or just go out there and look for consulting companies. There's a lot of good ones out there, different ranges. I mean, some of them get ridiculously expensive. Some of them charge $400 an hour. More the average is probably 200-ish or so, like some of the bigger companies that are still, like Verizon does pen testing. AT&T, NCC Group is another good one. So if you need any recommendations, let me know. I can point you in the right direction.
That should also, you don't have to be pretty documentation.
Yes.
These companies, especially small, raw output.
Yeah, and you got to be careful of that.
PCI compliance.
And be leery of the cheap pen test, because I know someone that worked for, one of my friends, his ex-manager went to work for a company, and they were like a reseller, hardware reseller or something, and they were doing pen tests. They were just running Nessus, and they would just sit there and put it in their boilerplate. They weren't validating anything. They were doing a vulnerability scan and selling it as a pen test. So you want to make sure that they're validating those findings and trying to exploit it. If they're not trying to exploit it, it's a pen test. If they're just validating vulnerabilities, then it's a vulnerability assessment.
I had a situation like that with a PCI compliance situation with a local retailer here. They kept giving me this raw output in Nessus all day, every day, and they kept telling me the site was horrible. And they were using that as an excuse to charge the client X amount of money per month just because they wanted that extra money for processing.
Yeah, you have to watch out for that. And that's too common. I mean, a lot of people, someone wants to be a pen tester, and they don't know, they haven't went through the right training, and they think that's what it is, you know. So, anyone else have any questions? Oh, you're welcome. So if if we could look at doing more of these in the future, what would you guys think about if there was like if you got together and like watched a stream of like the Dallas event?
That'd be sweet.
Because Eric asked me, I'd met Eric at one of the Nortex or the Fort Worth ISSA meetings a while back, and he asked about starting a chapter. It's just kind of hard to, because right now I'm doing a meeting in Denton and Dallas too once a month. So I was thinking maybe we can get around to streaming it, then maybe you guys could get together and watch the stream as a group. I'm hesitant to just give out URLs and let everybody view it, because just on their own, because what you miss out when you're not in the group is the networking. You know, these people here, you know, this guy next to you could hire you. I mean, that's my last two jobs. I mean, Wirefall, or Dustin, the guy that runs Dallas Hackers, I got a job through him because we knew each other for a year, and he knew I was pen testing, and they had opportunity come up. He knew I had OSCP, and so he came to me. So the networking is really important, and I stress that to my students all the time. And I had a recent UNT grad that goes to Dallas Hackers and OWASP meetings. I've known him for probably about 3 years or so and see him all the time. And he had recently said at Dallas Hackers he's looking for an entry-level pen testing job. So someone came to me, since I teach, you know, ethical hacking class looking for entry-level pen testers. I didn't really have anyone at the moment, but I remembered that he was looking, and I referred him, and he ended up getting the job. So, I mean, he's a good candidate. He deserved it. It's just the person getting, you know, matching up the right people together. And so getting together like this is good. And that's what, two of the goals I had was to offer like free education, and the second goal is to introduce people to the security community. Because you can ask, like Ben, he came to like the first Pwn School meeting in Denton, and now you see him all over the place. And so people are finding resources they didn't know about otherwise. And then just getting together and networking is good.
Just so everybody knows, I'm Eric, by the way, but I'm trying to facilitate more in your local side of things. That was one of my reasons for reaching out to Bill originally. So I'll keep in communication with Bill and he'll probably, as I try to do things more, get more people together here in Fort Worth, hopefully not, Bill saying, if you're at this location or somewhere else, streaming his talks from other places. Still have
Because it's important. That's good. You know, someone may be there that can explain something that, you know, or know something about it, and conversations start there too. And again, the Dallas one, I mean, the Denton's pretty good, but the Dallas meeting, it's trying to get people away, getting people outside of Dallas sometimes is tough, like trying to get people to Denton and stuff. Because so far, the first meeting in Dallas, we did one on labs, because anyone that wants to be a pen tester or interested in ethical hacking, you need a lab. So our first talk was on building your own lab. Then we had someone do a talk on hardware hacking, and then mobile hacking and stuff like that. So there's really interesting talks each month, and people that are really good and experienced. I mean, people out there wanting to help teach others. The nice thing about Pwn School was when I first announced I was starting it up, I had people volunteering and say, hey, I can come teach if you want me to. So In Dallas, I haven't had to present there yet because I've had people offering to speak. For me, I'll do every one of them if I need to, but it was nice to get people in from the community. That way, people gets a different point of view each month, not the same person's point of view. Yes.
Can I maybe interject?
Sure. Exactly. Sure.
I have a segue to career opportunity if anybody's looking for one. There's a company called Cognizant. I have an internal contact that is looking for to fill a few particular positions.
Wow.
And security. I'm not entirely sure. I can give you the phone number if you're interested.
Yeah, and if you guys, anyone else is looking for a job or hiring, that's one of the things that we do at the other meetups. Usually ask who's hiring and who's looking. And when I know what people do, if I hear of anything, I'll pass the information on. Recruiters approach me a lot, so sometimes I'll send that out through the message group.
Do you teach the GPAT?
No, but I teach ethical hacking class at Richland College, and we're going to offer it online starting in January.
Developer's position starts at 90K.
That's good.
Yeah. It's a good opportunity.
So yeah,
You're going to offer that class in the summer too, or just?
it should be in the summer. I offered it this past summer
Okay.
because it used to be a 16-week class, and it's reducing it to 10 weeks, which over the summer it was 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And that seemed to be a good amount of time. We're able to get through the manual, and probably starting summer, we'll probably start using the Pen Test Plus content. But one of the things I want to do is still make it, the Pen Test Plus content's good, but I'm still going to, what I do there in the in-person class, and then as long as anyone lets me stream them, then I'm going to bring in special guests each, a couple times a semester. We had lock picking one time. So if anyone's even, you're doing the online class, if you want to lock pick, I'll let you know when that's going on. So maybe something you may want to drive in for. So we do like lock picking, and then I have Tinker from Dallas Hackers. He's one of the hosts there. He's a pretty entertaining guy, and I had him come in and talk about it. He likes to describe this one pen test that he did, and I usually bring him the first of the semester because it helps motivate students. Although this past semester I really motivated students, I really didn't need to motivate them anymore, but I'd kind of have him come in, and then I had a commander that runs the CTF at Dallas Hackers. I had him come in last semester and talk about setting up home labs and doing CTFs, and he does a lot of red teaming stuff, so he has some interesting talks. So the Pen Test Plus content's good, but I still want to add in other stuff outside that. It's not going to be just your generic Pen Test Plus class. It's still stay in the spirit of what it is, but different manuals. I like the content. I've been going through some of the trainer stuff on the Pen Test Plus, and it's really good information. Anyone else? Well, done. I guess we have this until 9. So if you guys just want to hang out and talk. Thank you. Thank you all for attending.
So the VM, how are we to get that?
It's going to be out on, I'll send out a message, a group message, or I'll put up on the discussion board.
Okay.
And it's just out on, I have a Google Drive, so